Hello, everybody. My name is Dolly Chugh. I'm from New York University, the Stern School of Business, where I'm a professor. And I am thrilled to be in the room where it happens. This is an incredible assembly, and I'm so grateful to be part of it. What I want to share with you today begins with a memory I want you to bring up for yourself. Think about your favorite food. Think about a drink you really enjoy, time with a best friend, sex, getting a paycheck. Think about that. All right, come back. I've lost the room. Think about all that, and by the time I'm done with my remarks, I'm hoping to convince you there's something that matters to you even more than any of those experiences you just brought up. But before we get there, I want to talk about unicorns. Unicorns. I mean, like the old-fashioned kind of unicorn. I realize, did I go too far? I'm good. The old-fashioned kind of unicorn, not the Silicon Valley billion-dollar startup kind of unicorn, the kind that we see in mythology and art and folklore. It's elegant, it's beautiful. It captures something that we want to be true in the world, but it's not. It's imaginary. Unicorns aren't real, and because they aren't real, they offer me, as a social scientist, an important metaphor. See, in the world I'm in, I study issues about ethics and justice and social issues like race and gender. And what I'm interested in is how they manifest in reality, not in our imaginations. And what the news that I bring from my field is that the idea that we're capable as human beings of perfect ethicality, of being perfectly ethical all the time, as we imagine ourselves to be, is a unicorn-like idea. It simply doesn't exist outside of our own imaginations. It's a beautiful and elegant notion, but the truth is, all of us sometimes inflate the invoice, or stereotype the student, or favor the friend. And so what I'm interested in is understanding how that can be true. How it can be true that some of the time, all of us act in ways that aren't perfectly ethical, but amazingly, every one of us believes ourselves to be a good person. We're very committed to that idea, despite the fact that the data is really clear in saying that it's not true that an objective third party would view us as being ethical all the time. That's the gap that fascinates me and many researchers in my field. So what I study is called bounded ethicality. Bounded ethicality emerges from a concept many in the room may be familiar with, bounded rationality. With bounded rationality, we know that the human mind is constrained by systematic processes that limit how much information it can process, how fast it can move. Bounded ethicality is a similar concept, systematic processes of an ordinary, healthy mind that mean that we sometimes depart from perfect ethicality. That sometimes how your brain works and how my brain works is different than how we imagine it to be. And that begins to explain this gap between how we see ourselves as perfectly ethical people and how we in fact behave. Our work on bounded ethicality is an attempt to integrate the work of many researchers out in the field that have produced really robust findings about the ways, the conditions, and the patterns behind when we depart from perfect ethicality. Now, let's go back to your favorite food and all those other experiences you were thinking about just a few minutes before. Here's the thing. Much as you love all those experiences, what the research shows is that you would take an opportunity to heighten your view of yourself over any of those experiences. Your self-view is more important to you than sex or alcohol or money or friends or food. It's that central to who we are that we see ourselves a certain way. And to make it even more interesting, we want to see ourselves as good people. That is in particular a self-view that we're very committed to. The vast majority of us view ourselves as more trustworthy, more honest, and more fair than everyone else in the room right now. We believe that to be true, and it's very hard for us to let go of. The only way we let go of it is in the face of a self-threat. Perhaps it's critiques we get from someone else. Perhaps it's a reminder of our own beliefs. Perhaps it's what Maya described with the signature we have to do before we fill out a form. These are moments in which we perhaps, with that self-threat, challenge that self-view of ourselves as a perfectly ethical person. So, here's what bounded ethicality predicts is happening in our minds. The way the theory works is that our mind is continually assessing self-threats in the environment. It's not conscious, it's just happening automatically right now as we sit here. We're assessing whether there's anything that will challenge our belief that we are good people. If there's no threat imminent, we go into a process that we call self-enhancement. And in self-enhancement, we continue to operate business as usual, and in doing so, we become less and less aware of ethical transgressions. So we see ourselves as ethical, and yet we slip action after action into more and more unethical behavior until there's a self-threat. When there's a self-threat, it's interesting. We get moved over into what we call self-protection. This is more episodic. The alarm has gone off. That's why we're over here in self-protection now. And in self-protection, there's a critical difference. You notice the arrow brings in moral awareness. That when we're in self-protection, we, at this point, begin to look at the decision in front of us as having some ethical implication. And in that moment, we slow down a bit. It's a little bit less of an automatic process. And we pay closer attention to not just, let's say, the business implications, but the moral implications as well. Now, what's really important to realize here is what Jared described earlier. It's the Jekyll and Hyde effect. This is the same person who's engaging in these different processes. So on one given day, they may be in a self-enhancement mode, and in a different given day, they may be in a self-protection mode. Self-enhancement is trending towards unethical. Self-protection is trending towards ethical. These processes are cyclical and automatic and dynamic, hinging on what happened in the recent past. The counterfactual is that in a different day, in a different moment, under a different condition of self-threat, I may have behaved completely differently. Good person, but not always. So what we want to propose is a different way of thinking about our ethical self-view. If we could challenge this belief in the unicorn, this belief in our perfect ethicality all the time, we might in fact be able to become ethical learners. And the work we've done in ethical learners talks a lot about the psychological safety we've been hearing throughout the day, the growth mindset we've been hearing throughout the day. That with those conditions in place, we could actually view ourselves as people who are continually striving for perfect ethicality, but sometimes slipping and willing to learn from it. We could perhaps construct an ethical self-view that isn't grounded in the unicorn, that lets the unicorn free, and creates a self-view that's grounded in bounded ethicality and continual learning from it. That's our hope. We offer you the challenge of seeing if there's ways in which you see the research and practice going in that direction. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed this.